it does make sense to start with the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa. Wilson, I feel like you were the most voluminous speaker last Sunday when talking about Tua's injury that was classified as a head injury by the Dolphins.
No,
originally it was classified as a head injury. He was questionable return with a head injury.
In game, right? Yeah,
he was pushed to the ground. This is last Sunday, week 3, pushed to the ground by Matt Milano.
Yep.
He hit his head on the ground. He stood up. He was running back towards the huddle. He stopped. He went down to the ground.
Hold on. He didn't run. He sort of jogged and he stumbled down to the knee with no one around him.
Yes.
So
he then also needed help. He was taken to the blue. He went through the concussion protocol.
This was end of the first half. Went to the halftime.
Yes. And look, this is giving background for what happened tonight. And then the Dolphins later said, actually, it was a back injury.
And ankle somehow.
I think he hurt his ankle later. At any rate, there was no head injury, according to the Dolphins, even though they announced that. They changed it later. And then tonight, he was whipped to the ground and hit his head on the ground and had to be carted off on a stretcher.
Had a fencing reflex, which is where you flex your arms or your fingers and really makes people very uncomfortable to have to watch it. I'm sure it made Tua feel terrible as well to actually live through it. But it's one of those things that apparently, according to neurologists and neurosurgeons and anyone that studies the brain, it makes it clear that you've had a serious...
Your brain is sending some sort of reactionary response to shock.
Being sloshed around in the skull.
And so... all of this takes place in the context of the Dolphins changing the injury report last week.
Well,
changing the injury designation. Sorry.
One was end game and one was after. Just for clarification, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but just so we're clear. Yeah.
A bizarre way that and look, this is part and parcel of a brand new broadcast team and a brand new halftime team being asked to discuss something they haven't done, the Amazon crew, while also being aggressively partnered with the league for the first time, the NFL, and not wanting to. We're being honest here. There was probably a lack of a veteran broadcasting presence to discuss why Tua was on the field in the
Al
first
Michaels
place.
was in the booth. Al Michaels is 80 years old. I don't think
I'm talking about the halftime team.
I don't think that even matters. That has nothing to do with it's not necessarily their job. We can just as much talk about what we think as what that crew thinks. It doesn't.
I would push back on that a little bit, but okay.
If you're not on Twitter and you're just watching the game and you get your news various other places, whether it's CBS,
Amazon, somebody in Amazon production crew is getting their news on Twitter because they changed their tenor after the game.
Of course, but that's you could argue part of the problem. I'm not going to fault Richard Sherman, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Andrew Whitworth, who've been out of the league for 15 minutes for not going all in on this. I mean,
as our pal Michael Davis Smith pointed out, Richard Sherman, when he was a player, was consistently complaining about the quick turnaround.
There's no player that likes Thursday Night Football.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, but Richard Sherman wrote an entire article for the Players Tribune on it.
Fair enough. But I mean,
let me ask you this: do you think
the bigger story are the Dolphins and Tua? It has nothing to do with the halftime show. Is my point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure, of course. Do you think that the Dolphins failed Tua?
Yes.
Okay.
Whether it's the Dolphins,
Should Tua have been on the field tonight?
No, of course not. Whether it's the Dolphins, whether it was the neurologist in charge of it, whether it was the NFL, wherever the finger needs to be pointed, Tua shouldn't have come on after halftime last week. And I said that at the time. That's not, you don't have to be smart to know that. I mean, clearly, because if I'm saying it, any moron with half paying attention would understand that if you're stumbling around, which is also on the no-go list for the NFL's concussion protocol in black and white, and he was stumbling around, unable to keep your balance, whether it's your back or not, how about you just keep them out? And, several people tweeted throughout the evening, this is worst case scenario for the NFL in that you had 4 days, you're doing an investigation, and whether that investigation was serious or not, now it has to be serious. Like you could have been just...
Oh, the NFL wasn't investigating. The NFLPA was investigating.
Okay, well, it has to be serious, is my point.
No, I'm saying, but the NFL wasn't doing like some cursory investigation. It was the NFLPA saying, hey, we think you kind of did something bad here. We'd like to investigate. It does feel. Does this feel 2013? When was the Brandon Merriweather on Todd Heap hit? in the
Oh,
Colt McCoy
gosh.
James Harrison hit.
Early.
I feel
early
like 2011. I'm
Okay.
not saying that this feels like a little bit of a sea change moment just for the NFL, because for a while it had gotten to the point where if you were concussed or like potentially concussed, you just weren't playing the next week. Like MLB has a 7-day concussion protocol. Baseball.
No, yeah, Bill and I were talking about this before the podcast. NBA guys don't come back. right
Okay,
after
but
concussions.
that's a different argument, because the argument is why, because like you guys have already said, Tua was not diagnosed with a concussion by the independent specialist or
Neurologist,
by
yeah.
the Dolphins team physician. So from those people's point of view, they weren't putting him out there to get a concussion because he never suffered one in the first place. So that is the problem. It's not
He never went into concussion
well,
protocol.
well, how do you fix that problem? How do you make sure something that's so obvious to everyone watching at home? I mean, you have actual, we play doctors on Twitter, but there were actual doctors on Twitter saying he clearly has concussion symptoms. He should not be going back in this game, just like what Wilson's saying. And so the problem is that people were saying, the people who evaluated him said it wasn't concussion, put it on his back injury, said that's what caused these things. And so you have to fix that problem before you can fix. You have to get the people who are evaluating these players have to be on the same page. So that's what you need to find out. Why did the independent, unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant decide that Tua didn't have a concussion if it seemed pretty clear that he did?
Well, that's my other point. Wherever the truth lied 4 days ago, it doesn't matter now because of what happened on Thursday night. Because now the NFL is going to be like, oh, okay, people are outraged that someone.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Injured.
Do you think that this is a sea change moment for the NFL? Because
Why? We don't know what the NFL is going to do.
the
It just
NFL does
happened.
not. People in the comments can say the NFL doesn't care. They can say that the league is not worth. The league does care, and the league may care. Because the league cares, maybe not for the right reasons, but the league does care.
I think it would be fair to say they need to care a little more. It's not complicated.
They don't want to get sued again by another generation of players. That's all they care about.
It's not complicated to say Tua shouldn't play.
Like, I've had back pains, and when you have back pains, you like grab your back, and you like kind of like you don't fall to the ground usually.
He didn't fall.
And then
to
act
the ground.
woozy.
Yeah, he stumbled. Yeah, I mean it's not complicated. I mean, I don't know why this would be a sea change moment. Number one, it just happened. Number two, the NFL is in the business of making money.
And just for the record, our graphic on the screen here, by the way, is the official designation of the NFL and the Dolphins, not our take on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if he just held him out last Thursday and didn't let him play tonight, we're probably in a different place. But as Breech noted, some doctor, one of the NFL-sponsored neurologists, said he didn't have a concussion and went through the week.
Right, and an independent neurologist, not somebody employed by the Dolphins. So if you're the Dolphins and this independent neurologist tells you, nope, he doesn't have a concussion, he's good to go, you're going to take that and run with it. All right, well, then he's going to play Thursday because he doesn't have a concussion. We're not going to worry about
Thursday, they brought him back out of the game last
week. For the second half. Right, so like that is where you find where the root of the fault lies.
Well, and it's worth noting that you can be concussed and not test positive for concussion. This is not like peeing in a cup and you test positive for whatever is in your system. It is not. There is a lot of gray area. Your brain all gray, obviously. That's the joke. This is not a black and white test for concussions.
Okay, what's your point?
Well, that Tua could have been concussed on Sunday.
Again, just err on the side of
no, I agree with that, but I'm saying that that's the protocol that you go in there, you get checked, you go through the protocols, he passes, and so they have to come up with a way to say, and this to me is where the investigation.
The no-go list says if you are unable to stand up straight.
I'm saying that
done.
To me, the investigation should center around once he was cleared by the independent neurologist for not having a concussion. What was who determined that he had a back injury? How do we get to that point? Because that feels to me like, okay, we can't just send him back out there and say nothing happened. There's video of him falling down.
If you're having those conversations, the question should be, how did we get to this point as the independent neurologist? Because even if he doesn't have a concussion, the fact that he stumbled around and has some,
Well, no, he probably did have a concussion. He just didn't test positive for it. He didn't test.
You're not even a doctor, and you can come to that conclusion. That's my point. If you're the neurologist, just say, hey, you know what? Let's be cautious here, and we'll just have him sit down for the second half. That's all I'm saying. Instead, you roll his ass back out there, and then, whether he was concussed or not on Thursday night, he was certainly concussed when he left the field because he got body slammed through the turf. The other thing I'll say, and this has nothing to do with Tua or the players or the neurologists, how about this? How about we make all the fields grass? How freaking hard is that? Odell Beckham talked about this the other day. J.C. Trotter, who is the player rep for a while, I don't know if he still is, talked about this in 2020. It's not difficult for a bunch of billionaires to turn the turf fields into grass. Would that have saved Tua tonight? I don't know, but it certainly doesn't help to have your head slammed down on a thin layer of turf, which is covering concrete. And never mind the other lower body injuries that go on it just blows my mind that we're playing on turf. Unless you're a high school team or a lower college team where you don't have the money, there's no excuse for a professional team anywhere to have freaking turf.
Even the Bengals?
Absolutely not. John Harbaugh said that his players went to Steve Bisciotti years ago and said, look, we don't like the turf. He's like, done. Put grass in there. Steelers have grass. Steelers have the same climate as Cincinnati.
It should not. It is like rock hard. Yeah.
But anyway.
And like that was a hard whip, like back to the head.
Oh, that was a body slam. Look, I was almost surprised there wasn't a flag on that. I don't know what the rules are on body slamming players inside the pocket. Maybe it's okay, but out in the middle of the field, if you do that, you get a flag.
Yeah, I think that the way that if you watch a replay, it was almost like he just grabbed him and tackled him, and Tua's like head happened to snap back and more
because the guy weighs 320 pounds and body slammed it to the ground. I don't think that's a dispute.
All right. So I mean, this is gonna be a story for
you think?
A bit.
And from JJ, here's what Mike McDaniel said after the game. Quote, for me, as long as I'm coaching here, I'm not going to fudge that. If there's any inclination the person has a concussion, they go into the protocol, and it's very strict. As long as I'm the head coach, it'll never be an issue to worry about. So clearly, Mike McDaniel was just working under the belief that there was no head injury at all suffered on Sunday, and that's what the Dolphins are going to stand by. And they're going to say, look, he got cleared by an independent person that the NFL brought in here. So what do you want us to do? And that's going to be what they're going to say to this.
Well, and the other thing too is when you're the head coach doing this, and I mean, like, I know we were joking about Bill Belichick. He's like, I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon.
Can you imagine if you were a pediatrician?
Yeah.
Your son has polio. Next.
Mike McDaniel. So when this happens, when a player is taken to the medical situation, and you can think about Dak Prescott and how that went down with Mike McCarthy in a very serious, but not like, concerning head situation. You, like, as a head coach, you were not spending every minute of your time like talking to the doctors. The game's still going on. You're still worried. You know what I'm saying? You're still worried about the game. You want to get all the information, but you do have to game plan for the second half. There's a lot of things you have to do. I don't blame Mike McDaniel. You have to operate on what information you are given from the people who are paid.
Also worth noting, and someone mentioned this in the comments, Tua could be like, I'm fine. RG3, that was RG3's go-to this rookie season. What'd you say?
Tua definitely said he was. Tua definitely would.
Yeah, because RG3 said that all the time his rookie season. When the head injuries, it was like the knees or whatever it was, and he convinced Shanahan Sr. to let him play, and even know how all that stuff went. So it's not uncommon. And in fact, speaking of Richard Sherman also admitted that his rookie season, I think he said he got a concussion. He lied to stay in the game because he needed to play. He was a 5th round pick or whatever, and it was important to get on the field. And that part I understand as well. Tua's not in danger of losing his job, but he's a competitor and, type A, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be able to, well, I point the finger at the independent neurologist. Like, just be cautious.
The problem is that the independent neurologist, while independent, is also, there on the NFL's behest.
No. I don't think that's true. And I think the bigger concern is
who else is bringing them?
Your reputation. I don't know how it works, but I can't. That's the whole point of them being independent.
Oh, no. But they're not. No. I don't think that they're. Sorry, they are there. I don't think they're like doing like
NFL's bidding.
ha ha ha, Dr. Nick, and he like like pulls off a mustache and is like, yeah, this guy's fine to go in. No, I just mean that like the NFL brought these guys in, but they established the minimum baseline standard for preventing guys from going back on the field.
Do you know that? I mean, you feel comfortable saying there was a minimum baseline standard? Because I don't know that.
I mean, based on the last 4 days, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I don't know the details. My point is that if you're the neurologist and it reflects on you personally, and we don't know who this man or woman is,
but
that's your reputation. That's
right. But there's like a standard protocol that you go through, and he's not the man or woman who's doing it is not like, hey, this guy looks like he's completely checked out. It's I'm going to like this is what doctors do. They're going to look through 7 to 8 checkpoints, and if you pass, you pass. If you don't, you don't.
Breech, what is the protocol for being an independent neurologist? Do you have that information? You're looking something up.
You probably have to be a doctor.
Are we sure?
So I would think that's a key. And then they wrote up the guidelines that all these players have to go through to pass concussion protocol.
Yeah, no, JJ tweeted him out last Sunday. I think Billy put him in the rundown for us, and he didn't pass last Sunday when he got hurt just before halftime, and yet he magically appeared in the second half. And back injury, ankle injury later, he's playing on Thursday. Didn't play poorly, but I mean he got his brain sloshed twice in 5 days. Is the reality. Whether he's concussed or not, it's not good for his above the neck goings on.
The fact that it happened Sunday to Thursday is the real problem. I think on it
Monday to Sunday it would be just as bad.
Well, yes, but if there's like a Sunday 1 o'clock game,
fewer people are watching. Okay.
It's an island. I mean, when I say the real problem, what I mean is the optics problem, but also the fact that
yeah, I agree with that.
4 days ago, you tweeted as the Dolphins medical staff said Tua is questionable return with a head injury, and then 4 days later, he is out and he's on a stretcher, and the other thing too about this, it's mentioned a lot that he has feeling in his extremities. That's just that's great. This is it's not a spinal injury.
Yeah. You know what he's feeling? Pain.
Yeah. And then they said, and then they're putting him on the plane.
Yeah.
Why would you not spend the night in Cincinnati? What do you need to get back? Do you have to get back to see the Miami doctors? Cause I'm not sure that those guys, all FUB and there's come on guys, he got TKO'd last Sunday. Yes, that's what we've been saying.
Breech, you did say that Mike McDaniel, you talked about that tweet you put in there where you said unequivocally yes.
Not that one. I talked about the one before that. So, but basically McDaniel was also asked, can you unequivocally say that Tua did not suffer a concussion on Sunday? And he said, yes, Tua did not suffer a concussion.
I mean, that's sort of what you have to say. You can't hedge that answer.
Well, did you hear Herb Street and Al Michaels? So, and you guys were giving me crap for tweeting this, but the halftime show, Amazon's halftime show didn't mention, maybe Andrew Whitworth did a little bit, talking about the whole lead up to this. They were trying to be they were trying to talk appropriately about hey, the important thing is Tua's okay and he's he can move his fingers and all that. But then you could tell that they cut to Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, and they did this quick little montage of last week and a breakdown out of it. And it was very, I don't want to call somebody's broadcasting skills sloppy because, me, and Herbstreit, right. Herbstreit's a professional. Al Michaels is the GOAT, but you could tell that they were not prepared to do that to have that conversation. And it felt like somebody was reading. It was oh my God, no one on this broadcast is talking about it. We need to talk about it now. And then after the game, there was a whole launching pad situation with everyone on the set where they were talking about it. I just think that it's interesting. Will this conversation linger past tonight? Will it?
I don't think it's necessarily on the telecast in real time. I guarantee you we'll be talking about it tomorrow on HQ. They'll be talking about it on the ESPN properties. You can bet your ass on that. I think Mike Florio, who spent all of halftime talking about it, will continue to talk about it. on PFT and his radio show. I don't think this is going anywhere. I don't care that they didn't talk about that. I said it already. I mean, that's not. It's 15 minutes.
I'm not
of
trying to
halftime
complain
show.
about the broadcast. I'm just saying that like
It's not going anywhere.